There it is. That might be a big one. Oh yeah, I think he's not bad. He's not that big. But I like opening the bail, opening the spool when I'm fighting fish on a jerkbait instead of relying on the drag. All right, let's get him in. It's not a bad one right there, guys. All right, good fish. We're gonna let this guy go and we're gonna break down the gear for you guys so you can know what to throw with the jerkbait, rod, reel, line, bait, all the good stuff. See ya. All right, so a jerkbait is one of my favorite things to throw in the winter, guys, and I'm gonna sit down and break down the gear that I use for it because I really feel like this is a super simple approach to jerkbait fishing, and this gear has worked really, really well for me. So we're gonna start breaking that down, share it with you guys. Number one, throw your favorite jerkbait, whatever you want. This is the one I'm throwing, the one I've been catching them on here at Lake Guntersville and everywhere throughout the country. Finished 5th place last year in a Bass Pro Tour event in East Tennessee, caught almost every fish at Douglas and Cherokee on that guy. It's a Berkley Stunna. It's a 112 size, and if you watch our jerkbait video, you'll hear me talk about always having 2 rigged up. You want a deeper lip, and then you want your normal standard size lip like this guy, just to allow you to reach those fish that might be a little bit deeper. And you might only pick that rod up a couple times throughout the day, but it's really important to be able to have it ready, basically ready for action, right? When you see that fish, or you want to throw a deeper one or the shallower one, it might be vice versa. You're throwing the deeper one most of the day and you see a fish up shallower, you don't want to pull that bait down and get it past them. That's really key, is keeping this bait above them. So that's the bait we're throwing. Line, I use 15-pound fluorocarbon, and I know you might think that's heavy, and I used to think 15-pound fluorocarbon for a jerkbait, especially growing up out west, like we always threw 10 and 12-pound line. I always used to think 15 was too heavy, but man, I started throwing this a year ago, really because I read some articles and saw some videos of Hank Cherry doing it. He's a phenomenal jerkbait fisherman, and I read that he was throwing 15-pound line and watched videos of him throwing 15-pound line. So that's what I throw. I throw 15-pound line now. If I really want to get the bait down deeper, you know, that's when I'll just go to a bigger lip bait instead of going to lighter line now. That's kind of my preference to do. So 15-pound line, 110, 112 size jerkbait, that's just gonna be, you know, your standard size. When it comes to a rod, you do not need to spend a lot of money on a jerkbait rod. You can definitely get by with a $100 rod, $80 rod. I think these Veritas rods that I use are 100 bucks, 120 bucks maybe. But the key, whatever rod you're gonna use, you don't need an expensive one because there's no, like, you don't need to feel the sensitivity of this bait. So if you're gonna spend money on a jerkbait setup, it's gonna be in the reel, and I'll explain why in a second. But it doesn't need to be the rod because it's not about sensitivity. You're just jerking and waiting to feel that thing load up. And when it loads up, you know you got a fish on. So it's pretty simple at that point. I always recommend people using, or if they wanna spend money on a nice rod, to use those rods, the expensive rods, for anything they're dragging on the bottom, because that's when sensitivity comes in and is a big player. So for a jerkbait and really any kind of reaction bait, you can use definitely cheaper rods that aren't gonna have as much sensitivity, because that's not what it's about. You know, it's about feeling for that rod to load up and getting a good hook in those fish doing that. And a cheaper rod will get a good hook in a fish just as good as an expensive one. So 7-foot medium rod is what we're using right there, the white guy from Abu Garcia. And then as far as reel goes, I have talked about it before, but paying attention to gear ratio is really important to me. I don't want to just throw, you know, all the same gear ratios on every bait. I mean, gear ratios are made because you need to have options, you know, in the baits that you're throwing of how fast you want to be reeling that bait in. The one thing with the jerk bait is all the action that I create in this bait is from the rod tip. So it's jerk, jerk. And when you think about it, all the reel is doing is picking up slack. So I like using a fast reel on a jerk bait. I use an 8, 3-to-1 is what it is. But the key is that it picks up 32 inches of line per turn. That's a really important thing. I definitely recommend something that picks up at least 30, if not more. If you're using something that picks up line slower, like 24 or 25, 26 inches per turn, that just means you got to turn the reel handle more to catch up to your bait. You want to be able to turn this reel handle quick and catch up to your bait and have, instant contact with your bait again. So I think a fast reel is really important on a jerkbait. And then the last thing is, if you're gonna spend money on a jerkbait, this is a really expensive reel, guys, I'm not gonna lie. It's not expensive, it's a luxury, right? It's a high dollar reel. This is a Xenon MG LTX, but I think it's worth it to spend money on a nice reel for a jerkbait rod or a jerkbait setup, because you got to think about, a lot of times you are fishing a jerkbait, it's windy. And if you need to cast this bait into the wind, there's no doubt that a more high dollar reel is going to do that better for you. It just comes off the spool when you cast. The spool has less tension against it. Even if you loosen everything up on a cheaper reel, they don't cast as nice into the wind as a high dollar reel. So I don't care what you buy. I'm just giving you the advice that if you do want a nice jerkbait setup, go cheap on the rod, get yourself a nice reel that can cast into the wind, that is fast, an 8-3-1, whatever, 8-1-1, but that picks up a lot of line. And then just put 15-pound fluorocarbon on. That's what I do, and it works great. I'm telling you guys, this is the perfect jerkbait setup. I got to throw in this over a year ago now, and I throw every single jerkbait on the same exact setup. So the only way I would go to lighter line and maybe a smaller rod is if it was a really small jerkbait. But this day and age, honestly, I'm not throwing really small jerkbaits. I'm throwing bigger ones. I want to draw those fish out of the cover or out of the structure that they're holding on. So this rod, this whole setup does a trick for me. Anyways, guys, hope that helps you picking out a jerkbait setup. It's a great time of year to throw it. It's winter. It's cold. You see I'm in my bibs. We actually kind of have a nice day right now, a little bit warmer, but the water temps are dropping and these fish are eating jerkbaits. So go get you a good jerkbait setup. Go catch you some fish on it. It is a blast. I swear I could come out here every day and throw a jerkbait. I love it. And the good thing is it does work year round. You can throw this whole setup year round, but in the winter, man, this thing is killer. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. We'll see you next time. Make sure to like, subscribe, and thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a great day.